bridge of the Vindicator smelled of ozone and blood. Captain Dane Keller wiped a streak of sweat from his brow with the back of a grimy glove, eyes fixed on the main display. Shattered hulls drifted in the void. Alien, angular wreckage that had once been the pride of the Galactic Council's fleets. Now, floating tombs. "We've punched a hole clean through their core systems," came the gravelly voice of Commander Holt from the tactical station. "Council signals are collapsing across all bands." Dane didn't answer. His jaw was clenched so tight it ached. This wasn't victory. Not yet. Not until the Council's leaders were ash in orbit, their smug faces erased from existence. Not until the debt was paid. "Status on the Nemesis group?" he barked finally, still pushing through the inner defense grid. Heavy resistance around the Council spire. Holt paused, voice lower now. "We lost the Ragnarok. All hands." Dane's gut twisted, but his face remained stone. The Ragnarok had been one of the first black hull warships. Dark matter engines, classified for decades, built in secret after Earth was humiliated by the Council. After the Treaty of Thalkar stripped humanity of its colonies, its fleets, its pride. He remembered standing on the floor of the Terran Assembly when the Council's envoys, those glistening, posturing lizards, had dictated terms to Earth like a pet to be muzzled. His brother Jacob, a Navy officer, had called it what it was: slavery. 2 weeks later, Jacob's transport was accidentally vaporized by Council patrols. No trial, no justice, just a transmission. Incident regrettable. Case closed. That had been 5 years ago. 5 years of rage. 5 years of black budgets and dead engineers buried in unmarked graves as humanity built what the Council said was impossible. Dark matter war drives, weapons that bent physics itself, hulls invisible to Council sensors, ships designed not to fight fair, but to slaughter. And now, here he was. Dane Keller, captain of the Vindicator, leading the Terran Dark Fleet straight into the heart of Council space. "Bring us about," he ordered, voice low. "Full power to forward batteries. Target the spire." "Aye, Captain." The Vindicator's engines groaned, the hum of compressed dark matter resonating through the deck. Outside, the void shimmered, an oily blackness where the ship's drives twisted reality itself. No Council ship had been able to track them in normal space. Not even their so-called sentient overseers could predict the chaos Earth had unleashed today. Holt looked up, a grim smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Message from Fleet Command. Admiral Barrett says, no quarter." "Good," Dane said coldly. "No prisoners." "They showed us none." The spire loomed on the screen now, an ancient construct orbiting the Council's capital world. A beacon of supposed unity, a place where the rulers of 100 species had condemned humanity to second-class status. "Target lock achieved," Holt reported. "Fire." The Vindicator's main batteries screamed to life. Streams of dark energy tore through the void, black lances that made the stars themselves dim. A heartbeat later, they struck home, and the spire erupted in a silent inferno, chunks of alien alloy spiraling outward, its vaunted shield grid nothing but shredded fragments. The bridge crew let out a collective breath, but Dane's eyes remained hard. He could see the Council ships scrambling, what few remained, a last desperate attempt to flee. "Patch me through to fleet," he said. A tone sounded. Across the battered but victorious Terran ships, his voice rang out. "This is Captain Keller. The spire is down. The Council is broken. Pursue and eliminate all remaining hostiles. Today, we take back what was stolen. No mercy, no retreat. Humanity stands alone and unchained." He killed the channel and leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, the rage in his chest eased, just a fraction, The war was far from over. The Council's worlds still stood. There would be reprisals. Blood for blood. But today? Today, they had shattered the unshatterable. "Captain," Holt said quietly. "Incoming transmission, Council priority channel." Dane's lip curled. "Put it through." On the screen flickered the image of High Archon Valen, once the most powerful being in the galaxy. Now pale, trembling, eyes wide with fear. "Captain Keller, I implore you, this is madness. Cease this assault. We will negotiate." Dane cut the feed without a word. Negotiation had ended the day they murdered his brother. The Council's core fleets were in full retreat. Scattered formations flickered across the Vindicator's display. Once flawless phalanxes of gleaming alien cruisers, now disorganized prey limping away from the battlefield. Dane Keller stood at the center of the bridge, fists clenched behind his back, watching. Years of humiliation had brought humanity here. Years of enforced disarmament, of protectorate status, of council ships patrolling Terran space like wardens watching over prisoners. And now those same ships ran. Commander Holt's voice cut through the tense quiet. "Captain, Council Sector Command just transmitted a planetary distress call. They're attempting to coordinate a civilian evacuation." Dane's gaze narrowed. "From their homeworld?" "Yes, sir. The Spire's destruction has destabilized their planetary defense grid. They know what's coming." "Good." He walked to the tactical display, a rotating schematic of the Council's capital world below. Velan Prime, a planet that had ruled a galaxy through corruption and arrogance, a place where human ambassadors had once been forced to bow before lesser beings. "How long until Nemesis Group reaches orbital dominance?" he asked. 30 minutes, sir. They've cleared the last battle stations. Remaining planetary defenses are isolated and failing." Holt hesitated. "Admiral Barrett is requesting fleet disposition. She wants to know if we intend to authorize full planetary bombardment." Dane's jaw tensed. That wasn't a question of tactics. That was a question of morality. Or vengeance. No one said the words out loud, but every man and woman in this fleet knew the ghosts they carried. Whole Terran colonies stripped bare. Civilians relocated. Entire populations pacified when they resisted Council rule. And when Earth protested, economic sanctions, starvation, quiet assassinations of Terran leadership. They will remember, Dane thought. We will make them remember. "Tell Barrett to hold position until we break the final defense grid," he said coldly. "No one fires until I give the order." Holt nodded. "Understood." "Any word from special recon teams?" Dane asked. "They've penetrated the lower Spire ruins. Heavy resistance in the inner tunnels, but we've confirmed capture of multiple high-value Council officials." Dane allowed a thin smile. The irony tasted sharp. The Council had always believed humanity was too emotional, too undisciplined to conduct war like their sterile, calculated fleets. They'd forgotten what real hatred could forge. The Dark Matter War fleet had been born from that hatred, and it would not be denied. A fresh comms alert flashed. "Captain," Holt said, voice taut. "Another Council transmission. Velan himself again. He's requesting direct contact, offering terms of surrender." Dane stared at the display. His instincts screamed caution. The Council rarely negotiated in good faith, and when they did, it was because they had no other choice. Still. "Put him through," he said flatly. The main view screen flickered, stabilizing into the gaunt visage of High Archon Velan. Gone was the opulent regalia. The creature looked smaller now, his blue-gray skin pale, ceremonial crest lowered in fear. "Captain Keller," Valen's voice quavered, "I speak for the remaining Council leadership. We acknowledge your fleet's superiority. We propose immediate cessation of hostilities. In exchange, In exchange for what? Dane cut in, voice ice. Valen swallowed visibly. Safe withdrawal of civilians, guarantees of protection for Council cultural sites, a new treaty recognizing Terran sovereignty. He hesitated. In truth, Captain, this war serves no one. Humanity has proven its strength. The Council can evolve. The hypocrisy tasted bitter. Dane remembered standing in the ruins of Liberty Station, where Council enforcers had executed unarmed Terran civilians for daring to fly their flag. He remembered the cold message announcing Jacob's death. A single data file, no explanation. You want mercy now? Dane's voice was low, dangerous. Where was your mercy when you enslaved Earth, when you murdered Terran citizens in cold blood? Valen's composure cracked. I was not responsible for all actions of— You are the Council, Dane snapped, and you will answer for it. He cut the transmission before Valan could reply. The bridge fell silent. Crew members glanced at one another, but no one questioned the decision. They had all lost something. Family, friends, futures, to the Council's tyranny. Orders, Captain? Holt asked quietly. Dane looked at the tactical display once more. His voice was steel. Signal the fleet, full assault, no quarter. The Vindicator led the charge. Dark matter drives flared, reality warping in the ship's wake. Terran warships, sleek black hulls that seemed to drink the starlight, descended into orbit, formation tight, weapons hot. Council ground defenses opened fire, flinging ion blasts and plasma bolts skyward, but against the Dark Fleet's shields, they were meaningless. One by one, planetary defense stations erupted in gouts of molten metal. Target gridlock achieved, Holt reported. Primary bombardment coordinates locked. Dane nodded once. Fire. A storm of destruction rained down on Valan Prime. Dark energy lances punched through the clouds, obliterating military command centers, starport hubs, orbital defense platforms. Cities that had once symbolized Council dominance now burned. On the bridge view screen, the devastation was undeniable. Whole districts reduced to glass, Council war monuments toppled in fire. It was not clean, it was not honorable, it was justice. Holt's voice came again. Priority update from Special Recon. They've captured a Council data core, classified archives. Command believes it contains evidence of premeditated Council war crimes against Terran populations. Dane's breath caught. Evidence, not just vengeance now. Proof. Proof that the war was righteous, that every life taken today was a debt repaid. Tell them to secure the core and prepare for extraction, he ordered. Hours passed. The planet's resistance crumbled. Fleeing Council vessels were hunted down by Terran strike wings. Dane stood alone in his ready room, staring at the burning planet below. The glow of orbital fires cast strange shadows across his face. He had thought this moment would bring closure. That watching the Council's heart burn would ease the weight he carried. But the rage remained. A deep, cold thing that no victory could erase. A chime sounded, Holt's voice over the comm. Captain, message from Admiral Barrett. She's requesting a fleet council aboard the Iron Requiem, high-level strategic conference. Dane exhaled slowly. The war wasn't over. Not yet. There were still Council worlds untouched, still loyalist fleets gathering in the outer sectors. Retaliation was inevitable. And Earth would need to be ready. Signal my shuttle, he said grimly. I'm en route. The Iron Requiem hung in orbit like a steel god, its dark hull bristling with weaponry, a symbol of the Terran will to fight. Dane entered the War Council chamber, flanked by Holt and two senior officers. Around the massive table sat the architects of humanity's vengeance, Admiral Barrett, stoic and sharp-eyed, Fleet Marshal Corda, scars across one cheek from the first failed Council uprising, Director Vance of Intelligence, eyes cold as the void. Barrett stood. "Captain Keller, your strike broke their core defenses. The Spire's fall has thrown the Council into chaos. But new intel suggests a regrouping effort in the Draelos sector, high fleet concentrations, loyalist factions." Corda leaned forward. "We have momentum. If we strike now, we can dismantle what remains of the Council's military infrastructure before they can reorganize." Vance added, "Intercepted Council comms confirm. Multiple species leaders are panicked. Their trust in Council unity is collapsing." Barrett met Dane's gaze. "You led the hammer blow. We want your assessment. Do we push deeper or consolidate?" The room was tense. The decision would shape the next phase of the war. Dane spoke without hesitation. "We push, hard, relentless. The Council's strength was built on the illusion of invincibility. We've shattered that illusion. Now we finish what we started. No refuge, no safe harbor. We burn them out of the stars." There was a beat of silence, then nods around the table. Barrett's eyes gleamed. "Then we prepare for Phase 2. The Draelos offensive begins at dawn." Dane sat back, gaze cold. The war had begun with vengeance, but now it was survival. Humanity had shown the galaxy its teeth. Now they would show them what it meant to cross Earth. The War Council adjourned as silently as it had begun. Orders were already flowing through the encrypted Terran fleet networks by the time Dane Keller returned to the Vindicator. Crews worked in grim, practiced efficiency. There was no celebration. Not yet. Victory here was only the first cut. Dane stood once more on the bridge, watching the tactical display update. New targets blinked in crimson, worlds and sectors long considered unreachable, guarded by Council Corps fleets, now vulnerable, now ripe for the taking. The Draelos offensive would be different from this first strike. The initial assault on Valen Prime had been calculated, surgical, cripple the Council, strike fear. But the Draelos sector was where the Council's military had retreated, taking with them their most fanatical loyalist fleets. There would be no quick collapse there, only brutal, drawn-out bloodletting. And that was fine. Humanity could bleed. It had been doing so for generations. "Captain," Holt said quietly, approaching Dane at the forward console. "Recon teams finished decrypting the first layer of the Council data core." Dane's eyes snapped toward him. "And?" Holt passed over a data slate. "You'll want to read this yourself, sir." Dane scanned the first few lines, and the old rage flared anew in his chest. Project Subjugation. Council Directive, 47 Beta, initiated following the signing of the Treaty of Thalkar. Purpose: systematic suppression of Terran political, military, and scientific development. Included: sanctioned economic sabotage, cultural erasure, and population adjustment protocols targeting resistant demographics. Population adjustment, a sanitized phrase for genocide. The next lines were worse, orders signed by senior council members authorizing the use of biological agents in isolated Terran settlements. Names, locations, proof. He looked up, jaw tight. "How many copies?" "Redundant backups in secure fleet archives now. We've also transmitted the data to the Assembly on Earth. They'll go public as soon as the files are authenticated." Holt's voice was hard. "The galaxy will know." Dane's fists curled. Let them know. Let them all see the rot at the heart of the so-called Enlightened Council. For years, Terran dissidents had been branded radicals or terrorists for daring to speak of Council atrocities. Now the truth was undeniable. "Good," Dane said. "Very good." The fleet began its jump sequence hours later. The Vindicator slid into formation with the first wave of the Dark Fleet. Black hulls gleaming, weapons charged. Dane's command group would spearhead the assault, supported by the heavy dreadnought Iron Requiem and the carrier Midnight Sun. "Jump coordinates locked," navigation reported. "ETA to Draylos boundary, 9 hours. "Execute," Dane ordered. The dark matter drives engaged with a deep, resonant hum. Space itself seemed to warp, stars smearing into strange geometries as the fleet vanished into hyperspace. In the ready room, Dane met with his senior officers, Holt, Tactical Officer Briggs, and Communications Chief Laurent. The mood was cold, focused. Briggs began. "Recon intel indicates heavy Council force concentration at Draylos Prime. Estimated 4 fleet groups, including multiple heavy cruisers and orbital platforms. Council loyalist warlord Rythus is believed to be in overall command. No love lost for humanity." "That's putting it mildly," Holt added. "Rythus was one of the architects of the forced relocation programs." Dane's eyes narrowed. He remembered Rythus's face, a reptilian sadist who had once boasted that humanity would be pacified within 3 generations. Now he would face the full weight of a Terran fleet forged in hatred. "What about planetary conditions?" Dane asked. Laurent answered. "Draylos Prime is a fortress world. Military-industrial centers, major shipyards, and several deep civilian bunkers. The Council will use them as shields. Expect them to hide behind their own population." Cowards to the end. The Council's high ideals had always been a lie, power and domination dressed in the language of unity. Now, stripped of their veneer, they clung to whatever defense they could muster. "Rules of engagement remain unchanged," Dane said coldly. "No quarter to military targets. Civilian infrastructure is secondary. We will not allow them to regroup." The officers nodded grimly. No one here had illusions about the nature of this war. Mercy was a luxury humanity had never been afforded. 8 hours later, the fleet emerged at the edge of the Draylos system. Dane stood on the bridge as the Vindicator's sensors lit up with enemy signatures. The Council was waiting, a wall of ships, tight formations bristling with weapons, defense grids fully active. "They're dug in," Holt muttered. "Hard." "Good," Dane replied, voice low. "Let's break them." He keyed the fleet-wide channel. "This is Captain Keller to all Terran forces. We face the architects of our people's suffering. They will show no mercy. Neither will we. Engage at will. Burn them out of the stars." The Vindicator plunged into battle, flanked by escort destroyers. Dark matter beams lanced across the void, tearing into Council formations. Enemy ships responded with desperate volleys, ion barrages, and plasma storms. But they could not match the Dark Fleet's speed or firepower. Dane watched coolly as a Council battlecruiser exploded under coordinated fire, its shattered hull spiraling into the planet's gravity well. "Tactical! Focus fire on their command group," he ordered. "We take Rythus's fleet apart first." "Aye, Captain." The Vindicator's batteries roared. One by one, enemy capital ships fell. The Council formations began to falter, ships peeling away in disorder. But Rythus's flagship remained, a massive dreadnought anchoring the defense grid. "Bring us about," Dane said. "Target their flagship." The Vindicator drove in, guns blazing. Council escorts swarmed to defend, but Terran strike wings carved through them mercilessly. "Shields at 80%, Holt reported. "Enemy flagship returning fire." The Vindicator rocked under a heavy salvo, but her dark matter armor held. Dane leaned forward, eyes locked on the tactical display. "Full power to forward batteries. End them." The Vindicator unleashed a withering barrage. Black beams punched through the enemy flagship's hull. Explosions rippled across its surface. "Enemy core overload," Holt shouted. A moment later, the Council dreadnought detonated, an expanding cloud of flame and wreckage. On the bridge, a low murmur of satisfaction ran through the crew. Dane allowed himself a brief nod. One more butcher consigned to the void. With the enemy command broken, the battle tipped decisively. Terran forces pressed the assault, driving surviving Council ships into retreat. Within hours, orbital superiority was secured. The fleet moved into blockade formation, targeting the remaining planetary defenses. Dane surveyed the burning skies of Draelos Prime, a grim satisfaction in his chest. Another Council stronghold reduced. Another blow struck for Earth. But the war was far from over. Deeper sectors awaited, harder battles, greater risks. The Council was cornered now, and a cornered enemy was dangerous. As Dane watched the flames below, Holt approached. "Captain, Fleet Command has received a new intelligence packet from Special Recon. You need to see this." Dane raised an eyebrow. "More Council data?" "Worse," Holt said grimly. "A hidden project. Deep black, off books. Codename, Helios Protocol." He handed over the slate. Dane's eyes narrowed as he read. The Helios Protocol was an endgame weapon, a Council bioweapon project designed for planetary-scale deployment. Target, Earth. Final phase had been scheduled for activation. Next cycle. Dane's blood ran cold. The Council had known they were losing, and in their cowardice, they had prepared genocide as their last act. He looked up, voice iron. "Get me Admiral Barrett, now!" Admiral Barrett's image flickered onto the Vindicator's comms screen moments after the message was sent. Even through the distortion of the secure channel, her expression was hard, eyes sharp as blades. "What have you found, Captain?" she asked without preamble. Dane Keller wasted no time. He slid the decrypted files into the transmission queue and spoke flatly. "Council bioweapon project, codename Helios Protocol. Classified endgame contingency, designed for planetary sterilization. Primary target, Earth. Activation was scheduled for the next Council cycle." For a moment, even Barrett, veteran of more battles than Dane could count, went still. "Details?" she asked, voice low. "Genetic viral agent, engineered for rapid atmospheric dispersal. Synthetic markers tailored to human DNA strands specifically. Project developed under the Directorate of Advanced Biotech, overseen by Archon-level clearance. Last known research facility. Coordinates point to the Helixis Deep Complex in the Varath system." Barrett swore, rare venom in her tone. They knew they couldn't win conventionally. They were preparing a final strike. Dane's jaw was iron. If we hadn't struck when we did, Earth would be ash and bone by now. Barrett's eyes narrowed. "This changes everything. Draelos was meant to be a staging victory, but we can't leave Helios in play. Not even for another day. I want that facility eradicated. Top priority." "Understood. You'll take the first strike group personally, Captain." Barrett's tone was absolute. "We don't trust this to long-range bombardment. We need that site verified destroyed, and if possible, I want that research captured. The Council doesn't get to bury this filth. The galaxy will know exactly what they are." Dane nodded grimly. "One more thing," Barrett added. "Intel suggests internal fractures in the Council leadership. Factions are turning on each other. There's a window of chaos we can exploit. Move fast, hit hard." "Acknowledged." The channel cut. Dane turned to Holt. "Prep the fleet. We jump for Varath in 2 hours. Full battle readiness. This mission takes priority over all other objectives." Holt's expression was grim. "Understood, Captain." The Vindicator's crew worked with cold precision. The fleet reorganized swiftly. Dane selected a strike force of the most battle-hardened vessels. No green ships. This wasn't a campaign objective anymore. This was survival. By the time the dark matter drives spooled to readiness, the strike group hung in formation at the edge of the Draelos system. Sleek, black warships, their hulls gleaming with a predatory sheen. Dane stood on the bridge as the final checks came through. "Jump solution locked," navigation reported. Verath system arrival in 7 hours. Execute, Dane ordered. The stars twisted as the Vindicator and her escorts vanished into the void. The Verath system had once been deep Council territory, industrial hubs and research worlds, shielded from prying eyes. Now, with the Council reeling, it was exposed. But even so, Helios was buried deep. Halexis Deep Complex wasn't a city or a military base. It was an underground vault, kilometers beneath the surface of Verath III's barren moon. Shielded, armored, defended by some of the Council's most advanced automated systems. Recon data was sparse. No clear layout. No full defensive schematic, which meant this wouldn't be a clean orbital strike. They would have to go in, boots on the ground, cutting the heart out of the beast by hand. 7 hours later, the strike group dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Verath system. Multiple Council defense satellites detected, Holt reported. No major fleet presence. Automated perimeter. Dane's gaze sharpened. They were counting on secrecy, not strength. Correct. If they call for reinforcements, we'll have a narrow window to complete the mission. Dane keyed the fleet channel. This is Keller, Strike Group. Begin suppression of orbital defenses. Ground assault wings. Prep for immediate deployment. We take the complex alive and intact if possible. If not, we turn it to glass. The Vindicator's guns opened fire first. Dark matter beams lanced through the void, vaporizing Council defense satellites in seconds. The automated defenses responded sluggishly, clearly not designed for sustained fleet assault. Within 20 minutes, orbital control was established. Dropships launched, sleek, black assault transports descending toward the barren moon below. Dane rode with the first wave. No commander's prerogative would keep him in orbit this time. He would see this mission through with his own eyes. The landing zone was a wasteland of jagged rock and thin atmosphere. The Halexis Deep Complex entrance loomed ahead, a massive armored bulkhead set into the side of a canyon. Automated turrets and defense drones peppered the canyon with fire as the first Terran squads advanced. "Suppressive fire!" came the shout over comms. Terran Marines surged forward, black armored figures moving with lethal efficiency. Heavy weapons barked, drones fell in burning fragments, and within minutes, the outer defenses were breached. Dane led the assault through the main bulkhead, breaching charges tearing through reinforced alloy. Beyond, sterile corridors descended into the depths of the moon. Resistance stiffened inside. Council combat drones, gene-engineered guards, desperate scientists armed with makeshift weapons. But the Dark Fleet Marines gave no quarter. Room by room, level by level they advanced, cutting through opposition with brutal precision. The complex stank of chemicals and burning metal. 3 hours in, they reached the central core. Dane stood over the shattered doorway, weapon in hand, as Holt keyed the final override. The blast door hissed open, and what lay beyond turned even his hardened stomach. Rows of sealed biocontainment pods lined the chamber, each filled with shimmering liquid and suspended viral payloads. Monitors scrolled endless data streams, mutation rates, dispersal patterns, human genetic markers. A figure stood at the far console, a withered council scientist, gaunt and shaking. He raised his hands in surrender. "Don't shoot," the creature hissed. I can deactivate the sequence. The weapon is not yet primed." Dane's weapon didn't waver. "You will deactivate it, now." The scientist scrambled to comply, tapping furiously at the console. Monitors shifted, containment field stabilizing, dispersal sequence locked down. It is done," the creature stammered. "The weapon is neutralized." Dane strode forward, eyes burning. "Explain this project." The scientist cowered. "High Archon order. Contingency for Terran insurrection. No choice. We obeyed." Cowards, all of them. Dane forced down the urge to simply pull the trigger. They needed proof. "Holt, secure the data core. I want every file copied." Aye, Captain. Terran techs moved swiftly, extracting the full archive. The Council's darkest secret would be exposed at last. Extraction was brutal, Council stragglers launching last-ditch resistance in the upper levels. But the Terran forces held firm. Hours later, the Helixis Deep Complex lay in ruins, its bioweapons secured, its creators dead or captured. Back aboard the Vindicator, Dane stood before the fleet channel once more. This is Captain Keller. Mission successful. The Helios Protocol is neutralized. Evidence secured. Earth is safe for now. But he knew better than to believe the threat was over. The Council had been willing to wipe out an entire species to preserve its rule. They would not surrender lightly, and the war was far from done. Earth had never known a broadcast like this. From the heart of the Terran Assembly Building, under the battered but unbroken flag of Earth, Admiral Barrett addressed not just humanity, but the galaxy. The Helios Protocol data, fully decrypted, fully verified, now screamed across every open channel. Images of the bioweapon pods, signed orders from Council High Archons, the lists of human settlements marked for extinction, the projected death toll, total planetary sterilization. And one line that played again and again, burned into every watching mind. Primary target, Sol system. Final phase imminent. Dane Keller stood in the war room aboard the Vindicator, watching the ripple effect unfold. Holt and the other senior officers were gathered around the holo display, grim faces illuminated by the steady pulse of emergency alerts. Fleet intelligence reports flooded in. Across neutral systems, species once content to bow to Council power were rising in fury. Riots on Council-aligned worlds, insurrections on border colonies. Even within the Council's own species, cracks were forming. Holt's voice broke the silence. 15 worlds have formally severed ties with the Council in the past 12 hours. Multiple fleets in the outer sectors are refusing orders. The Council's grip is fracturing. Dane's jaw was tight. About time the rest of the galaxy saw them for what they are. But the news was not all good. Laurent, their chief intelligence officer, spoke next. Intercepted Council comms indicate a hardline faction is consolidating power around Archon rival. Military loyalists, extremist elements. They're pushing for full mobilization. Scorched earth strategy. Desperation, Holt muttered. They know the war's turning against them. Dane's gaze didn't waver from the holomap. The enemy wasn't finished. Not yet. A cornered predator was the most dangerous kind. And the Council had been cornered. Its mask ripped away, its crimes laid bare. Now it would strike back with everything it had left. 3 days later, the first retaliation came. It wasn't a fleet engagement. It wasn't a political maneuver. It was pure terror. A Council saboteur cell using stealth transport tech likely stolen or copied from Terran designs, infiltrated the outer Terran colony of New Carthage. The result? A biochemical strike on civilian centers. Thousands dead in hours. Not a military target, not a fleet yard. Civilians, families, children. When the report came through, Dane read it in silence. When he finished, he spoke only 3 words. Find them all. The hunt began instantly. Terran intelligence launched a galaxy-wide dragnet, tracking down Council operatives, sympathizers, shadow assets. The rules of engagement were clear. No quarter, no mercy. Dane stood at the center of it, his orders unflinching. The time for restraint was long past. Meanwhile, the front lines surged forward. The collapse of the Council's border sectors opened a brutal new phase of the war. Fleet Marshal Corda led a hammer offensive through the Wylath corridor, crushing Council holdouts, liberating enslaved human and alien populations alike. But the resistance hardened as they pushed deeper. Rivals' loyalist fleets were fanatics, armed with prototype weapons, suicide tactics. The casualty reports rose with each passing day. Entire Terran strike wings lost in meat grinder battles, ground campaigns where victory cost rivers of blood. And yet, there was no turning back. Not anymore. Not after Helios. Not after New Carthage. In the midst of the chaos, a new intel briefing reached the Vindicator. Holt brought it straight to Dane's ready room. Captain, priority intelligence from Special Recon. Source embedded in the Council inner circle. Dane scanned the decrypted file, and his blood ran cold. Rival's faction was preparing a second contingency. Not another bioweapon. Something worse. A doomsday fleet. Black site warships armed with planet cracker devices. Relics from the Council's ancient wars. Weapons capable of fracturing worlds. And their target list began with Earth. Dane stood in the briefing chamber as his senior officers gathered. "This changes the entire war," he said, voice like steel. "We knew they would retaliate, but this is extinction level." Holt's face was grim. "Fleet intel confirms the existence of the project, codenamed Cataclysm Wing, hidden fleet yards in the Thalren Rift." Briggs, their tactical officer, scowled. "The Rift's a nightmare to navigate. Gravity distortions, ancient minefields. No easy way in." Laurent added, "And no time to wait." "If they launch even one of those weapons, it's over." Dane's eyes burned with cold fury. "Then we go in," he said. "No hesitation. We hunt them down. We tear that fleet apart before it ever leaves the Rift." Admiral Barrett's approval came swiftly. "You have full operational authority, Captain. Take what forces you need. The Rift is yours. Destroy Cataclysm Wing. At any cost." The Vindicator and its new strike group prepared for the deadliest mission yet. Elite assault ships. The fastest dark matter scouts. Veteran crews who had survived the worst of the war. No one else would survive the Rift. As the fleet assembled, Dane met briefly with Barrett via secure channel. "What are we walking into?" he asked bluntly. Barrett's voice was hard. "A trap. Rival knows we'll come. But we have no choice. If Cataclysm Wing launches, Earth burns." Dane's expression didn't waver. "Then we make sure it doesn't launch." "Godspeed, Captain. The fate of our species may well ride on this." Before departure, Dane gathered his crew one last time. No speech, no false promises. Just the truth. "You all know what we're facing. We may not come back. But if we don't go, no one else will. We do this for Earth, for everyone we've lost, for everyone who can't fight." And they answered, not with words, but with cold, steady determination. The fleet jumped for the Thalren Rift that same night. The rift was worse than any chart had suggested. Space itself seemed warped, gravity currents dragging at the ships, sensor readings scrambled. But the Vindicator pressed on, her dark matter drives tuned to pierce the distortions. Council patrols were everywhere, advanced stealth frigates, mines, automated hunter-killers. The first engagement came within hours. "Multiple contacts dead ahead." "Evasive maneuvers, weapons hot." The Vindicator danced through the chaos, beams lancing out, tearing enemy ships apart. The rift lit with fire and wreckage. But this was only the outer ring. The true prize, Cataclysm Wing, waited in the heart of the maelstrom, and as they pushed deeper, the cost mounted. Escort ships lost, crews killed, damage to key systems, but still they drove forward. Dane stood unshaken, eyes locked on the display. No matter the cost, no matter the blood, they would finish this. Finally, deep within the rift, the target was found. A hidden fleet yard, massive, ancient, bristling with unfinished warships. And among them, the planet cracker devices, their cores glowing with unstable energy. "Target confirmed," Holt reported. "Cataclysm Wing is here." Dane's voice was iron. "Then we burn it down." There it was, the beating heart of Rival's mad plan. The hidden fleet yard sprawled across a pocket of relative calm within the Thalran rift, concealed beneath a shifting field of sensor-scattering debris and ancient minefields. Council engineers had been working here for decades, unknown even to most of their own kind. And now Dane Keller's fleet had found it. Hanging in the void were the war machines of extinction, a half-dozen immense black-hulled cruisers bristling with weaponry, each one carrying a planet-cracker device fused into its core. One launch, one hit, and Earth would die. But not today. Dane stood at the center of the Vindicator's bridge, gaze locked on the tactical display. "Enemy fleet has detected us," Holt reported. "Defensive grid activating, automated turrets online, hostile strike wings launching." "Time to optimal weapons range?" Dane asked. 5 minutes. He nodded once. "Then we go in hard, full combat spread, all ships, weapons free." The Terran strike group surged forward through the rift's currents, dark matter drives screaming against the gravitational pull. Council frigates closed in fast, sleek predator ships armed with gravitic cannons and plasma lances. "Multiple hostiles inbound," Holt shouted. 70+ contacts. Focus fire, break their formation." The Vindicator's main batteries opened up, hurling black beams into the void. Enemy frigates died in flashes of fire, shredded by the pinpoint strikes. Terran escorts followed close behind, carving through the enemy flanks with ruthless efficiency. But the Council defenders fought like the damned. Suicide drones swarmed the formation, forcing Terran point defenses to the brink. Mines detonated in cascades of white-hot plasma, rocking ships with crippling blasts. "Report!" Dane demanded as the Vindicator shuddered under a near hit. "Shields holding at 65%, Holt replied. "Minor hull breaches on decks 4 and 6. Maintain course. Push through." Ahead, the true enemy waited. Cataclysm Wing, still docked in the massive superstructure of the fleet yard. But already, Council crews were rushing to bring the ships online. Engines powering up, planet cracker cores spinning toward launch readiness. "Estimate on enemy launch prep?" Dane asked. Lawrence's voice was grim. 12 minutes until first ship reaches firing parameters." Not enough time for a clean siege. Not enough time for surgical strikes. There was only one option. Dane keyed the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, prioritize Cataclysm Wing. Close assault. We cannot allow those ships to launch. Burn them down, at any cost." The Vindicator dove straight into the teeth of the defense grid, guns blazing. Dark matter beams sheared through enemy hulls. Terran fighters swarmed the docking arms, laying waste to exposed systems. But the price was high. One by one, escort ships vanished in fireballs, caught in the lethal crossfire of automated batteries and desperate Council defenders. On the bridge of the Vindicator, the battle raged closer and closer. "Multiple hull breaches," Holt shouted. "Shields fluctuating." "Maintain fire," Dane ordered coldly. "Target their engineering sections. Cripple them." A new alert flashed across the display. "Captain, enemy flagship undocking," Holt reported. "Planet cracker device charging. Estimated launch readiness. 5 minutes." Dane's gut twisted. If that ship escaped, Earth would die. "Weapons, target that ship. Maximum power. Bring it down." The Vindicator poured fire into the massive cruiser, dark beams slicing through armor and shielding. The enemy ship staggered, but its engines flared to life, dragging it free of the fleet yard scaffolding. Terran bombers swarmed after it, loosing wave after wave of torpedoes, but still it pushed forward. And then, a sudden scream over comms. "Ironclad destroyed!" One of their heaviest escorts, gone in an instant, consumed by a planetary defense laser buried beneath the fleet yard. Dane's hands clenched on the railing. They were running out of time, out of ships, out of options. but retreat was unthinkable. "Prepare for ramming course," he said quietly. Holt turned, eyes wide. "Captain, we cannot let that ship reach launch parameters. If we have to ram it, we will." Holt swallowed hard, then nodded. "Aye, sir." But then, a new voice over comms. "Requiem inbound." Admiral Barrett's flagship, the Iron Requiem, had entered the rift, battered, scorched from its own battles, but still fighting. "Barrett to Keller, hold the line. We'll cover your advance." The Iron Requiem plowed through the rift's chaos, guns blazing, drawing enemy fire away from the Vindicator. "Now," Dane barked. "All power to engines. Close on the target." The Vindicator surged forward, closing the gap. Enemy escorts tried to block the path, but were blasted aside by withering fire. At point-blank range, the Vindicator's batteries struck home, dark beams carving deep into the planet Cracker ship's hull. Fires raged across its decks. Power readings fluctuated wildly. "Critical hits," Holt reported. "Target destabilizing." And then, the enemy ship erupted in a colossal explosion, its unstable core tearing itself apart. The shockwave hammered the Vindicator, tossing it like a leaf in a storm. But the ship held. When the smoke cleared, the battlefield was a graveyard, shattered ships, burning wreckage, drifting bodies. But Cataclysm Wing was no more. The doomsday threat was ended. Dane stood on the battered bridge of the Vindicator, body aching, uniform scorched. "Damage report," he said quietly. "Severe," Holt replied. "Shields gone. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Casualty lists still compiling." And yet, they had won. Dane keyed the fleet-wide channel one last time. "This is Keller. Mission complete. Cataclysm Wing is destroyed. Earth is safe. We hold the line." But as he stood there, staring out at the ruined rift, Dane knew the war was not yet done. Rival still lived. Council remnants still plotted. The final reckoning was yet to come. And when it did, Dane Keller would be ready. The wreckage of Cataclysm Wing still drifted in the cursed shadows of the Thalran Rift when the next orders came. Rival had fled. Not on one of the doomed planet crackers, not aboard a warship. Intelligence reported he'd slipped away on a stealth courier during the chaos. Cowardice dressed in tactical sense. The architect of the Council's worst atrocities, the man behind Helios, behind Cataclysm Wing, behind the New Carthage massacre, still alive. And worse, he wasn't running for safety. He was running for another weapon. Dane Keller stood with Admiral Barrett aboard the Iron Requiem, face carved from stone as the latest intelligence briefing played out in the war room. "New data from recon," Barrett said grimly. "Intercepted communications confirm rivals heading for the Zero's Abyss." Dane's brow furrowed. The Abyss, a rogue sector beyond even the old Council's grasp. No stable gates, no known trade routes. "What's in the Abyss?" he asked. Barrett keyed the display. A faded star map flickered to life. Ancient, corrupted files. "A pre-Council weapons vault," she said. "One of the original Zerosian arsenals. The Council buried it centuries ago. Weapons from the first Galactic Wars. Things too dangerous to use." "Or so they claimed," Holt muttered. Dane's fists clenched. "And now Rival wants to use them." Barrett's gaze was iron. "If he succeeds, this war will go beyond genocide. He'll trigger extinction on a galactic scale. We can't allow that." She turned to Dane fully. "I want you to lead this hunt. You know this enemy better than anyone. Take whatever forces you need, track him down, kill him, and if necessary, destroy that vault." Dane didn't hesitate. "I'll bring him back in pieces." The Vindicator was barely holding together after the Rift battle, but repairs were already underway. A lean, deadly task force was assembled, hand-picked veterans from across the fleet. Fast destroyers, dark matter scouts, marine strike teams. No heavy carriers. This wouldn't be a fleet engagement. This would be a chase, a hunt. And when it ended, one of them would be dead. Before departure, Dane stood alone in his quarters, staring at a single holo image. His brother Jacob, lost to the Council's lies years ago. The trigger for all of this. The seed of the hatred that had forged the Dark Fleet. "This ends with you, rival," Dane said quietly. "One way or another." The jump into the abyss was chaos. Gravity storms, spatial fractures. The laws of physics frayed thin across the sector. The task force moved in stealth, slipstreaming through the unstable currents. Council loyalist scouts were already there. Rivals' vanguard, ambushes in the dark, hit-and-run strikes, ships dying without warning, sucked into gravitational whirlpools. But the Vindicator pushed on. Dane would not turn back now. On the 6th day in the abyss, a breakthrough. "Captain," Holt reported, "intercepted transmission. Rival's courier pinged one of the vault access nodes. We have a vector." Dane's heart pounded cold in his chest. "Plot intercept. Full burn." The race was brutal. Council hunter-killers swarmed in to block the Terran advance. Fights erupted in the shattered void, running battles amid debris fields and dead stars. Dane led from the front. No hesitation, no retreat. And slowly, relentlessly, they closed the gap. On the 9th day, the vault emerged from the shadows. A colossal station, ancient, cyclopean, half buried in a broken planetoid. Energy signatures flared across its structure as Rival's forces activated it. Dane stared at the display. "He's inside," Holt said grimly. "And arming something," Laurent added. "Energy readings off the scale." Dane's voice was steel. "Prepare boarding teams. We go in." The assault began in fire and blood. Terran dropships punched through the vault's outer defenses, landing amid burning debris. Marines stormed the ancient halls, fighting Council loyalists in brutal, close-quarters combat. The air stank of scorched metal and alien blood. Dane fought with them, weapon in hand, driving forward through the carnage. This wasn't a fleet battle. This wasn't politics. This was personal. Deeper into the vault, the scale of Rival's madness became clear. Experimental weapons, gravitic imploders, dark energy warheads, antimatter plague drones, devices that could erase worlds, stars, entire species. And Rival, desperate, cornered, was trying to activate them. Finally, at the vault's core, the last confrontation. Dane led the strike team through the final blast door, weapons raised. And there he was. Rival, tall, gaunt, eyes burning with fanaticism, surrounded by dead scientists and sabotaged control systems. A single device primed at the chamber's center, a gravitic imploder large enough to collapse the vault, and everything within 100 light years. "Stay back," Rival screamed. "One more step and I trigger it. I will not be taken." Dane stepped forward, weapon steady. "You've already lost," he said coldly. "Surrender or die." Rival laughed, wild, broken. "You think you've won? You think your pathetic species can rule the stars? We are the Council. We are the Order. Without us, there is only chaos." Dane's voice was ice. "Then we'll take chaos. Over your corpse." The standoff seemed to stretch forever. Tension crackled in the air. Marines had fingers on triggers. Then, a flicker in Rival's gaze. A twitch toward the detonator. Dane moved without thought. One shot. One clean shot. Rival jerked, blood spraying, the detonator clattering from limp fingers. He fell, eyes wide with shock. And just like that, the architect of humanity's near extinction was dead. The vault was secured, the weapons neutralized or destroyed. And as the Terran task force pulled back from the abyss, battered but victorious, the news spread like wildfire. Rival was dead. The Council's last great monster gone. Aboard the Vindicator, Dane stood alone once more. There was no triumph in his heart, only cold, exhausted resolve. The war was not truly over. Council remnants still lingered, battles still raged, but this was the turning point. And one day soon, the final reckoning would come. It began with silence. For the first time in years, no council fleets patrolled the hyperlanes. No edicts streamed from Velon Prime. No bounty was posted for the head of a Terran officer. Rival's death had broken them. The Council High Assembly fractured within days. Loyalist worlds rose in rebellion. Slave species overthrew their overseers. Council warlords turned on each other, desperate to carve out scraps of power from a dying empire. And at the center of it all, Earth stood, bloodied, vengeful, unbowed. Dane Keller knew better than to call it victory. Victory would mean something pure, something final. This was survival, bought in blood, fire, and the ashes of a galaxy that had once sought to erase humanity. Aboard the Vindicator, now rebuilt and refitted, Dane stood with Admiral Barrett once more. A final war council. One more campaign to plan. The last of the Council's core worlds are holding out, Barrett said, voice low. A coalition of the old guard, fanatics. They're calling themselves the True Order. Dane's gaze was iron. How many systems? 15, Holt answered. Fortified. Militia fleets, old Council dreadnoughts, Slaver mercenaries. And their leadership? Dane asked. Barrett's lips thinned. Valen himself. Dane's jaw tensed. That name, that face, the one who had smiled as Earth was stripped of its colonies, who had stood over Jacob's death sentence with impunity. He ran from Velon Prime after our assault, Barrett continued. Now he's holed up on Galathar, last Council bastion. Propaganda's already flowing. He's calling us terrorists, invaders, warmongers. Holt snorted. They called us worse when they had the guns. Dane said nothing for a moment. Then, we finish this. The fleet that gathered for the final assault was the largest Earth had ever fielded. Every surviving dark matter warship, the Iron Requiem, the rebuilt Vindicator, battle-hardened veterans from every front, volunteers from liberated worlds, even defected council ships, their crews throwing off the old regime. It wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was about justice. The jump to Galathar was a storm. Council defenders threw everything they had into the void. Suicide wings, booby-trapped freighters, minefields dense enough to blacken the stars. But the Terran fleet pressed forward, grim and unstoppable. Dane led from the front, the Vindicator's guns blazing. This ends today, he told his crew. We bring their empire down to the bone. The first battles were brutal. Council dreadnoughts fought to the death, entire squadrons ramming Terran ships in mad last stands. Orbital defense grids hammered the fleet with ancient plasma cannons. But the Dark Fleet had learned from years of war. Maneuver, precision, relentless force. One by one, the Council's lines broke. At the heart of the system, Galathar itself burned, a world of gleaming spires and luxury, untouched by the suffering the Council had inflicted elsewhere. Now its skies ran with fire. Terran Marines landed amid the ruins. Street by street, bunker by bunker they fought. And Dane was with them. He would not let Velon escape. Not this time. The final assault came at dawn on the fourth day. Council loyalists barricaded inside the Assembly Citadel, the last seat of their old power. Terran charges shattered the gates. Marines stormed the halls. And at the heart of the Citadel, in a grand chamber lined with alien gold, Dane found him. Velon. Thinner now, older, but still wearing the silk robes of power, still clinging to a tattered pretense of superiority. He looked up as Dane entered, flanked by grim Marines. So, the Terran butcher himself, Valen sneered. Come to play conqueror? Dane leveled his weapon. Your empire is dead, he said coldly. You'll answer for every life you stole. Valen laughed. Bitter, broken. You think this is peace? You think your people will rule in unity? You will become what we were. You will have to. The galaxy demands order, through power or through chains. Dane's gaze didn't waver. We'll take power then, and no chains. He raised the weapon. Valen's sneer faltered. You can't. One shot. Clean. The last High Archon fell. When the Citadel fell, the Council's heart finally stopped beating. The remnants scattered. Some fled into deep space. Some surrendered. Some fought on in forgotten corners of the stars. But the war, the Great War, was done. Aboard the Vindicator, weeks later, Dane stood in the captain's ready room, gazing out at the stars. The Terran Assembly had declared victory. Celebrations echoed from Earth to the Rim. New alliances were forming. New power blocks. The galaxy was remade in fire. And yet, Dane felt none of it. The cost was too high, too deep. The faces of the dead lived behind his eyes. Jacob, the crew of Ragnarok, New Carthage's children, the billions lost. Barrett visited him one final time before returning to Earth. You've earned your place in history, she said quietly. The man who broke the council. Dane shook his head. No. I didn't do this for history. He looked out again, voice low. I did it so we'd never kneel again. The galaxy was watching now. The Dark Fleet stood unmatched. The Terran banner flew where none had dared before. But Dane knew the truth. The war was over. The struggle was just beginning. Humanity had shattered the old chains. Now it would have to decide what to build from the wreckage. And if the stars demanded a hard hand, then so be it. Because Earth would never bow again. Not while men like Dane Keller still drew breath.